All right, Ukraine. The mess continues. Well, look, it's actually a little bit better today. So, yes, the Russians did apparently give an ultimatum to a couple of warships of Ukraine, saying that if you do not surrender by Tuesday, 5 a.m., we will board you. Okay? Now, as it turned out, they didn't. The 5 a.m. deadline came and passed, and then they turned to the Russians and they said, hey, what happened? I thought you guys were going to come get us if we didn't surrender. They're like, did we say that? We didn't mean it. I meant we never said it in the first place. Interesting. And then you know how the Russians had gotten 150,000 troops along the border, and they were doing some exercise there? Putin pulled it back a little bit. It seems like he's Putin in and out, in and out. I don't know. And speaking of which, he's got 16,000 troops already in the Crimea. Now, first of all, the Russians say, we're allowed to have 25,000 troops there according to our agreements. We've got a naval base and everything. Besides which, as they explained, quote, Putin did not acknowledge having any troops in Ukraine. What is he, Baghdad Bob? You remember the former information minister for the Iraqis when we first invaded? There are no American troops in Baghdad. They are dropping pencils, but the pencils are bombs. Okay, there are no Russian troops in Ukraine. In fact, that statement was so surprising when John Kerry was told about it by Andrea Mitchell on air. He was like, say what? Watch.
U.S. officials have been saying that Vladimir Putin will be isolated by his actions, yet today he seemed defiant. Speaking for an hour, taking questions, he said, among other things, that Russia reserves the right to take any action, to use any means, obviously military means. He described events here as an unconstitutional coup. He denied that there were any Russian troops in Crimea, occupying Crimea. He blamed the crisis on United States interference, saying that the U.S.
He really denied there were troops in Crimea?
Yes, he did. He also blamed the crisis on the United States, saying that the United States was acting as though it were conducting an experiment across the ocean on lab animals, on rats here.
It sounds like Kerry was saying, like, tell me what he said again? Now go ahead, Putin. Say what one more time? Well, look, it's actually working. That's the amazing part. So we threatened a lot of economic sanctions, and by Thursday, those sanctions might have already begun because they're having a meeting in Ukraine, an emergency meeting of the 28 countries in NATO, and they might have they would have voted to begin those sanctions. All of a sudden, we didn't say ultimatum. Our troops are not in Crimea. Now, don't get Putin wrong. He does say, if I decide to use armed forces, it will be in the line with international law. In other words, I reserve the right to kick your ass on a later date, okay? But hey, in Ukraine, that's progress, man. I'll take it. It's interesting. It looks like economic sanctions and talk of significant economic retaliation might have worked. Interesting. Okay, now let me show you a map of Ukraine so you get a sense of the ethnic situation there. You see, the blue areas are more ethnically Russian and Russian-speaking, okay? And the orange areas are more Ukrainian-speaking, right? Those are two separate languages for the ignorant among us, which is not an insignificant portion of the population. So as you can see there, Crimea is Russian-speaking, and hence has more loyalties to Russia in a lot of ways, but not necessarily fully, of course, and it's a complicated picture. And at one point, 300 Ukrainian soldiers were going back to take an airport that what appears to be Russian soldiers had taken, or at least Russian-backed troops, and the Russian-backed troops fired over their heads as a warning shot, and then the Ukrainian troops, who were unarmed, which is kind of a fun thing to be if you're troops, I would have armed them. But anyway, they walked back, but it looks like right now we're de-escalating the conflict. It could turn around in a single minute, right? But for now, good news.